Hey everyone, CPO here, and this is going to be a video to show you how I go about draining the fuel tank on this 2019 Golf R, and I'm doing it by making it use its own fuel pump to empty its tank. I'm using the low pressure fuel pump and an OBD11, and the reason I did this is actually a segment taken out of another video that's coming up soon, which is a dyno day where I did a 93 octane versus an E85 tune. And in order to achieve that, I had to change fuels between dyno runs so that they could happen basically back to back. So right there at the shop, I dumped all of the 93 octane that was in the tank. I ended up with about 6 and 7 gallons, somewhere around that range, that I had to evacuate out. And then I filled up with 10 gallons of E85. So I'm gonna show you how I did that. And yeah, hopefully this will be helpful. There is a way to get fuel out of the fill neck, right? But it only works if you're above about a quarter of a tank. Once you get down to about a quarter tank level, it really doesn't work that well. But what you need is a 1/4 inch outer diameter, a hard pipe, and you can get down past the little anti-siphon protection, and you can push through that and you can feel it go through. And I was able to successfully get gas out of that using a hand pump, siphon, that kind of stuff. But once it gets down to a certain level, it really becomes hard, maybe even impossible. And in the Golf R, it's a split tank. So you have the left side and the right side that the fuel pump will siphon out of both. But if you're trying to suck it out through the filler neck, you're only gonna get one side anyway. So that's not really effective. So I think this is the best way to get fuel drained out of the car. And I'll show you how I did it. It might work for you. I'll show you a couple options. I'm using a way that makes sense for me, but I'll show you an option that might make sense for you if you don't have like an ethanol sensor or a quick connect fitting already in place in the front. I'll show you where you can use the quick connect off of the fuel pump itself under the back seat. And yeah, so other than needing to switch fuels for dyno runs, it might be useful to know how to drain fuel out of this thing. Let's say you got some bad gas or you put the wrong type of fuel in, or somebody else did. It's good to know how to get fuel out. So this is a way that works. So let's check it out. All right, first thing I want to do is pull that low pressure fuel pump fuse. It's a 15 amp fuse in the corner so that I can get rid of the pressure in the fuel line so that we can tap into it. Now I demonstrated this in great detail in my Autotech high pressure fuel pump internals install. So if you want more details, you can go in there. But basically I'm going to start the car until it dies and then put the fuse back in because we actually need the fuel pump to run eventually. Pull off the engine cover. And one thing I am going to do here as a precaution is put this on a battery charger because I'm going to be running the fuel pump for a while with the engine off. I don't want to drain my battery sitting here. So that is why I'm doing that. All right, so essentially I'm going to be tapping into the ethanol sensor that I installed previously, which also has a lot of great details. As a matter of fact, the detail on this quick connect that I'm going to disconnect is in that install video. So I'll make sure you have a card or a link in the description for those. But basically, I'm going to tap into that because I already have quick disconnects in there. I can just undo that. There's going to be a little bit of fuel that comes out from that hose. So that's why I have the rags here. And I'm going to pull off the quick connect little plastic piece, stick it back on the other side. And that gives me a 3/8 inch metal tube, quick connect tube, that I can then connect this guy to. I got this from the local auto parts store and it's basically a repair hose, but it's got a 3/8 inch quick connect on it. And it's a really simple to use quick connect. You can just clip it on. And there's just a little tab that you push. I'll show you how to disconnect that here in a second. But I'm basically just tapping in to that low pressure fuel pump supply line after the ethanol gauge, because that's the easiest place to connect to, and before it gets to the high pressure pump. And then this is just slipping on a hose off of another like fuel pump, manual fuel pump system that I got from Harbor Freight, and going straight into the fuel can. So essentially when I run the low pressure fuel pump, and I'm going to do that with OBD11, it's going to pump the fuel out of the tank into the gas can. So I'm going into the engine module and then finding the basic settings. From there, I'm just going to do a search for fuel. And then you'll see right at the very top there, it says drain fuel tank. Drain fuel tank is what I'm using for most of this. And what it's going to allow you to do is you flip that switch that says slide to start. And then it won't take very long, a couple seconds, you'll see it change to active. And then it will just start pumping fuel. Now it pumps fuel for a few gallons. Like it won't just continuously run until you stop it. I don't know if it's a timer based or volume based, but it runs for a minute or two, a gallon or two, and then basically you just keep restarting it. So I'm also being careful here to make sure that I don't run that pump dry. I have a lot of fuel in the tank, unfortunately, so I get to pump this for quite a while and restart it several times. But once you're down low enough, then you can just stop. There is another option to run the fuel pump. It's in the output test section of the engine. You can do fuel pump, and then you can do, there's a setting to activate the fuel pump. That does it for 10 seconds at a time. But this method worked pretty well for getting quite a bit of fuel out. So then I disconnect that extra line and then plug back in my line to the high pressure fuel pump. The key here is make sure that everything is nice and snug. Both sides of that quick disconnect clip are engaged properly, and then reconnect everything up. That is how I did that. And it actually worked really great and didn't take very long. Way better and arguably safer than trying to siphon fuel out of the tank. And you can see I got it down really, really low. All right, so I didn't actually do it this way, but this way probably would work just fine. Basically, getting access to the low pressure fuel pump right underneath the passenger side of the back seat in the Golf R, you'll see a very similar quick disconnect like we connected to that ethanol sensor. So it's got the same sort of a push button thing. You can remove that, and I'm thinking plug in that little extra part that I bought from the auto parts store and tap right in from there. But of course, I already had the ethanol sensor in place, so I just used that as a convenient way to tap in. Once I got the fuel drained out, I basically dumped in 10 gallons of ethanol and then continued on, obviously changing tunes and obviously waiting until the ethanol got circulated through the entire fuel system, and then I was back on the dyno. But I thought this might be helpful to see as a separate video for those of you who have thought about how would you actually get fuel out of your Mark 7, Mark 7.5 Golf. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next one.